The sky is a canvas of brilliant blue. White clouds drift lazily. A biplane, a Fokker D7, dances through the air. It is a thing of beauty and deadly grace. Its pilot is young, confident, a master of his craft. He is Hermann Göring, the celebrated ace. But the sky can also turn dark. It can fill with smoke and ash. Another sky, years later, is choked with the exhaust of bombers. The Luftwaffe, Göring's creation. These planes do not engage in chivalrous duels. They drop fire and death on cities. Below, on the ground, a different kind of darkness spreads. Smoke billows from chimneys carrying the stench of unimaginable horror. This is also Göring's world, the architect of terror. The second most powerful man in the Third Reich. How does a man fall so far? How does a celebrated hero become a monster? This is the central question, the riddle of Hermann Göring. We trace the journey from the cockpit of a fighter plane to the dock at Nuremberg. A journey into the heart of a man who embodied the best and the absolute worst of his time. This is Deadliest. We don't just tell stories, we keep score. We have developed a unique system to analyze the most formidable figures in history, a scorecard. It breaks down a life into 5 key categories. Our first metric is kills, wins. For Göring, this begins with his 22 aerial victories in the First World War. But it also includes the vast impersonal destruction wrought by his Luftwaffe. The second category is terror. This measures the fear a figure inspires. From the founding of the Gestapo to the implementation of the final solution, Göring's hands shaped the Nazi regime's instruments of fear. Next, we have innovation. He built the Luftwaffe from nothing into the most feared air force in the world. He revolutionized aerial warfare tactics. The fourth metric is legacy. What is left behind? Göring's legacy is a toxic mix of military legend, political failure, and moral depravity. Finally, we have our most important category, the verdict. It answers the ultimate question: hero or monster? This is where we weigh the dashing ace against the architect of genocide. Before the roar of an engine, there was the silence of privilege. Hermann Wilhelm Göring was born in 1893 into a world of comfort and influence. His childhood was spent in castles, not cottages, surrounded by the symbols of an old aristocratic Germany, a world of uniforms, honor codes, and romantic visions of glorious battle. His path seemed preordained. He was sent to a military cadet school at Karlsruhe, then to the prestigious Royal Prussian Cadet School at Lichterfelde. He excelled. He was a natural leader, charismatic and bold. The institution did not create his ambition, but it gave it shape and direction. The war came in the summer of 1914. Göring and his regiment were thrown into the fray on the Western Front. Confined to a field hospital with severe rheumatism, Göring's war seemed to be over. It was during this period that a friend, Bruno Lürzer, visited him. He spoke of a new kind of warfare, a battle fought not in the mud, but high above it. The idea captivated Göring completely. He initially served as Lürzer's observer, flying dangerous missions deep behind enemy lines. It was here that Göring truly had his baptism of fire. He completed his pilot training, and by late 1915, Hermann Göring was no longer a foot soldier. He was a pilot. He was about to climb into the cockpit of a fighter and ascend into the realm of legend. The air war of World War I was a new and terrifying frontier. The planes were fragile. Death was a constant companion. Yet for a certain type of man, this danger was an irresistible lure. These early fighter pilots saw themselves as a new breed of warrior. They were the knights of the sky. Göring thrived in this environment. He was a natural pilot, aggressive, instinctive, and utterly fearless. He quickly began to score victories. Finally, in June 1918, after securing his 20th aerial victory, Kaiser Wilhelm II awarded Lieutenant Hermann Göring the Pour le Mérite. It was the crowning achievement of his military career. In the summer of 1918, after the death of the Red Baron, the Flying Circus needed a new leader. The choice fell upon Hermann Göring. At just 25 years old, he was appointed the third and final commander of the Richthofen-Geschwader. He was the heir to the Red Baron. When the armistice was signed, Göring was ordered to surrender his planes. He refused. For Göring, the war did not end in honourable defeat. It ended in the stab in the back. He returned not as a conquering hero, but as a bitter, disillusioned veteran, clinging to the legend he had built in the sky. In the autumn of 1922, Hermann Göring attended a political rally in Munich. The speaker was an Austrian corporal named Adolf Hitler. As Hitler spoke, Göring listened intently. He promised a new, powerful Germany rising from the ashes of defeat. It was the call to battle Göring had been waiting for. Göring saw in Hitler the strong leader Germany needed. He declared his allegiance on the spot. "I unite my fate with yours, for better or for worse." In early 1923, Hitler appointed Hermann Göring Supreme Commander of the SA. Back in uniform, back in a position of command, he drew on military experience to instill discipline and purpose. He personally led his SA men in street fights, a different kind of combat, brutal and ugly, but combat nonetheless. It satisfied his craving for conflict and power. In November 1923, they attempted to seize power in the beer hall putsch. As the marchers reached the Odeonsplatz, the street erupted into a chaotic firefight. Göring, leading from the front, was hit by 2 bullets. The wound would have long-lasting consequences. This was the beginning of a lifelong addiction that would profoundly affect his personality and judgment. After 4 years in exile, a general amnesty allowed Göring to return. Hitler had decided power would be won at the ballot box, and Göring was more valuable than ever. He became the party's unofficial ambassador to the old elites. He was a master of this double game. In the Reichstag, he was a brawler. In Berlin drawing rooms, he was sophisticated and reasonable. In 1932, they became the largest party, and Göring was elected president of the Reichstag. He was perfectly placed to paralyze democracy from the inside. On January 30th, 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. The Nazis were finally in power, and Göring was at the center of the storm. Crucially, he was appointed Minister of the Interior for Prussia. He immediately purged the police of unreliable officers and replaced them with loyal Nazis. Just weeks later, the Reichstag building was set on fire. Göring masterfully exploited the event, using it as a pretext to launch a brutal crackdown. In this whirlwind of activity, Göring created a new secret political police force for Prussia. He named it the Geheime Staatspolizei, Gestapo. This was his personal instrument of terror. In March 1935, Hitler and Göring publicly announced the existence of the new German Air Force, the Luftwaffe. Göring was officially named its commander-in-chief. The Spanish Civil War provided the perfect testing ground. The infamous bombing of the Basque town of Guernica was a terrifying demonstration of the Luftwaffe's destructive potential. In 1936, Hitler appointed him plenipotentiary for the four-year plan. His mission? To make Germany ready for a major war. All economic considerations were now secondary to rearmament. Göring orchestrated the systematic theft of Europe's cultural wealth. Special trains, often called Göring trains, filled with priceless paintings, sculptures and tapestries, were shipped back to Germany. The process, known as Aryanization, was the forced transfer of Jewish-owned property into German hands. Göring, as head of the four-year plan, presided over this state-sanctioned theft. His signature is on the key document that set the stage for the Holocaust. It was a formal grant of authority from the second highest man in the state to the chief of the security services, charging him with organizing a genocide. The Battle of Britain was to be his crowning achievement. Frustrated by the RAF's refusal to break, Göring shifted the focus of the attacks to the City of London itself. When the German Sixth Army was encircled at Stalingrad, Göring assured Hitler his Luftwaffe could supply them by air. The airlift was a complete and utter disaster. Göring had once boasted that if a single enemy bomb ever fell on Berlin, you can call me Meyer. By 1943, Allied bomber fleets were pounding German cities into rubble. His credibility was destroyed. As the Third Reich crumbled, Göring made a final desperate play for power. Hitler ordered his arrest for treason. He surrendered to soldiers of the American Seventh Army, expecting honors. Instead, he was treated as a common prisoner. He was stripped of his medals, his bejeweled marshal's baton, his personal belongings. At a US detention center, he was weaned off morphine. As the drugs left his system, the old Göring began to re-emerge. The Allies had unintentionally restored his intellect and formidable personality, ready for one last battle. In the autumn of 1945, the city of Nuremberg was chosen as the venue for the Nazi Party's final reckoning. At the center of it all, listed first on the indictment, was Hermann Göring. In March 1946, it was his turn to take the stand. For 10 days, he put on a masterful performance. He sparred with the prosecutors, twisted the meaning of documents, and delivered long, self-serving speeches. The tide turned when Justice Jackson began cross-examination. Bit by bit, he exposed the lies and evasions, confronting Göring with his own words, decrees and signatures. Göring never truly broke. He remained unrepentant. To the judges and most of the world, it was the ultimate confession. On October 1st, 1946, the verdicts were read. The judges found Hermann Göring guilty on all 4 counts. The sentence was death by hanging. He refused to let his enemies have the satisfaction of seeing him hang. On the night of October 15th, 1946, 2 hours before he was due to be led to the gallows, a guard found the Reichsmarshal dead. He had bitten down on a small glass vial of potassium cyanide smuggled into his cell. His body was cremated with the other executed war criminals, and their ashes were scattered to prevent shrines. He cheated the hangman, but he could not escape the judgment of history. So we come to the end of our reckoning, the final tally. The sheer scale of death he is responsible for is almost incomprehensible. His use of terror was foundational to the Nazi state. His creative genius was directed entirely towards destruction, theft, and oppression. Finally, legacy. And our ultimate verdict. Göring's legacy is a case study in how charisma and heroism can mask a profound moral void. He is the eternal symbol of the Nazi elite, cultured, intelligent, yet utterly depraved. Therefore, the verdict is absolute. The charm, the medals, the wartime glory, they are all dust. Hermann Göring was not a fallen hero. He was a monster who once wore a hero's costume. The story of Hermann Göring is a timeless and chilling warning. It demonstrates how the virtues of the battlefield can be twisted into the tools of a murderous tyranny. His life forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the nature of evil. The path to Auschwitz was paved with the prestige of men like Hermann Göring, who made barbarism seem respectable. This is Deadliest. Join us next time as we uncover the story of the deadliest female warrior.